myself. Could I keep it to myself? Could I keep it to myself? Don't tell nobody. You've ought to been there, wasted my soul. Ought to been there, say my name on the road. I walk down. Welcome back to another piano lesson with Warren. My name is Warren McPherson, and if you're new to the channel, this is the place where we talk about gospel music and how to learn gospel music exclusively by ear, not by notes. So we teach everything from theory, chord progressions, inversions, ear training, technique, and we teach you how to do all of that without being able to read music. So if you haven't hit that subscribe button yet and the notification bell, do so you can stay up to date when we put out new tutorials. In this tutorial, we're going to talk about old school gospel music, or what we often refer to as traditional gospel. And I'm going to share with you 6 characteristics or 6 tips to play traditional gospel, old school gospel, because it's very different than modern gospel and CCM gospel. There's a certain style and flair and accents, if you may, that determine that unique style of this music. And so I'm going to share with you the 6 characteristics that I think is super important for you to learn if you want to get the feel of old school gospel. All right, so stay tuned. We're going to take a dive into that when we get back. All right, welcome back. So now let's take a look at these 6 characteristics. What's the first one? The first one is emphasis on the right hand, not the left. In traditional gospel, there's a lot of rhythmic and melodic things that's happening with the right hand, not the left hand. And so if you're accustomed to be doing a lot of chordal stuff with the left hand, you kind of want to move some of that to the right hand, right? Let me do a demonstration of what I'm talking about.
I wasn't gonna tell nobody, but I couldn't keep it to myself. Oh, I couldn't keep it to myself. Oh, I couldn't keep it to myself. Said I wasn't gonna tell nobody, but I couldn't keep it to myself. What the Lord has done for me. Said I wasn't gonna.
So you see, in that demonstration, my right hand was doing a lot of chordal stuff, and my right hand was playing a single note or 2 note at most in a lot of cases, right? And that's sort of one of the main characteristics of traditional gospel. That left hand has to be a little bit more thin because it needs to be flexible, right? And that right hand, I'm doing a lot of 3-note chord voicing movements. Sometimes I might do some octave runs, but at best, 3-note chord voicing moving, that's one of the big characteristics. I'm not using a lot of notes in the left hand, nor a lot of notes in the right hand, but the most notes I might have over here are 3 notes. Sometimes I might do some 2-note stuff, but again, the emphasis is on that right hand, not the left. Let's look at tip number 2 for playing traditional gospel: more staccato and portato playing, not legato. So when you're playing this sort of up-tempo traditional gospel, I'm probably using my sustain pedal about 10% of the time. 90% of the time, there's no pedal. And when we talk about staccato, this would be... So that's staccato playing, sharp, detached. Portato is in between legato and staccato, so not as staccato, but definitely not legato. So portato would be like... So the notes are being held a little bit longer, but still not long enough to create a legato feeling. And if you're wondering what legato means, it means smoothly connected. So if I'm doing stuff like... That's legato. portato, staccato. So staccato is the more detached, portato is the lesser detached, and legato is smoothly connected. In old school gospel, we get rid of legato completely. It's all portato or staccato. And again, the demonstration, look.
Said I wasn't gonna tell nobody, but I couldn't keep it to myself. Oh, I couldn't keep it to myself. Oh, I couldn't keep it to myself. Said I wasn't gonna tell nobody.
So everything I'm doing is very more detached, bouncy, so to speak. Another characteristic of traditional gospel. Let's jump to number 3. Number 3 characteristics of playing traditional gospel is stagger the rhythms between the hands. So very rarely you see both hands playing together. If I'm doing a chord movement, like when I do stuff like, when I'm doing movements like that, the hands has to move together, right? Because we're playing chords. But when I'm hanging out on one chord, there's a lot of staggering happening. So again, you might see me doing. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of staccato. It's almost like I'm playing a hand drum, staggering between the hands. So that's what helps to create that rhythm. Now, there's no rule about what kind of rhythm is wrong and what kind of rhythm is right. It all depends on the player, and there's so many different variations, and there's so many different levels. You can keep rhythms more simple, and you can get super complex and advanced with your rhythms. So it's a very wide spectrum, and the best way to get into this style of playing is to start explore, experiment, and try, right? Because, like I said, it's a very wide spectrum. It's not about wrong or right. It's about what sounds good and how complex you want to get. As always recommend start simple rhythms, and then you can build from there. But staggering the rhythms between the hands is super crucial. Good thing to start to practice for this style. Tip number 4 is to play more rootless voicing. Now, one of the reasons when we talk about why the left hand is so spacious, or why I'm only playing a single note here or 2 notes there, is because I am playing rootless voicing chord. Now, this song is in the key of A flat. But when I started, I'm using sort of either this voicing. So in this left hand, I'm playing the 3rd and the 7th of the chord, often referred to as the tritone voicing for the left hand, because the interval between the C and this F sharp or G flat is a tritone, right? So this is very common for traditional gospel. The left hand, most of the time, when you see them playing 2 notes, is that tritone voicing, the 1 and the 7. So you go, I said I wasn't going to tell nobody, but I couldn't keep it to myself. Then couldn't keep it to myself. Even when I go to my 5 chord, look what I got in that left hand. I have the 7 and the 3rd of the 5, right? And then in my right hand, I'm playing the 9, I'm doubling the 7, and I'm playing the 5th of the chord. So nowhere am I playing the root, which would be the E flat. So this is what they call rootless voicing. Could keep it to myself. Said I wasn't gonna tell nobody, but I couldn't. All those are rootless, dominant 7 descending. A flat 7, G7, F sharp, G flat 7, F7, And then those are just diminished passing movement. But 90% of the chords that I'm playing, rootless voicing. Now, this is a more advanced concept. So if this is not something you have done before, we're going to recommend you start simple. Now, while I'm on this, you might say, Warren, you're moving a little bit too fast. I want to see some of those chord changes. I actually have a full breakdown of this song in its entirety. From beginner, I start with a more intermediate version, and I have an advanced version of the tutorial. And this is available over at pianolessonwithwarren.com. You can access the full tutorial that also comes with the MIDI files, the backing tracks that you hear me playing. I have 3 versions of the backing track. So I have a slow version, a medium version, and the fast version is what you hear me playing to now. So you can practice slowly, because to get this under your fingers, you're going to need to practice it to a slower tempo first. So we have 3 versions of the backing track, MIDI files, and we're going to have some scores and everything, and a nice breakdown of everything that I'm doing while I'm doing it over at pianolessonwithwarren.com. So if you want that, I highly recommend you check out the membership program we have over there. All right, so that's rootless voicing tip number 4. Tip number 5 is that all major chords should be dominant 7th chords. And this is right across the board for every traditional song or any song you're trying to add that bluesy flavor to. The major chords need to automatically be dominant 7th. So when I'm on my 1 chord, said I wasn't gonna tell nobody, I'm playing a 1-7. Could keep it to myself to the 5. Could keep it to myself back to the 1. Could keep it to myself. Said I wasn't gonna tell nobody, but I could keep it to myself. What the Lord, or this is the only place I'm playing a minor 7, Lord has done for me. And but all the other places where a major chord comes, I'm using a dominant 7th chord. This is one of the unique characteristics of gospel music, traditional gospel. You will never encounter a major 7th chord in traditional gospel. You might see minor 7ths, but most of the time it's dominant 7th. And there are places where we can even oftentimes make that minor chord into a dominant 7th. In this case, the only place where a minor was changed to a dominant 7 is when we go to the 6. Right? But in other types of traditional gospel songs, there are a lot of places where you can turn the minor chord into dominant 7th, and it works. So that's one of the key cornerstone characteristics of traditional gospel. And the last tip for playing traditional gospel is heavy uses of chromatic passing tones and chromatic passing chords, which includes the blues scale. So when you see me doing, said I wasn't going to, see a lot of chromatic movements. Or chromatic movements. And then we have blues scale. That's the F blues, or I can use the A flat blues. So there's so many places that you can use chromatic passing tones, chromatic passing chords, and the blues scale. The blues scales allow you to use the chromatic passing tones. Another little secret is that when you're playing traditional gospel, you can use the blues scale of the relative key and also of the key you're playing in. For example, I'm in the key of A flat. The relative minor for A flat is F. So I can go to F and play F blues when playing in the key of A flat. So said I wasn't going to tell nobody, but I couldn't keep it to myself. Couldn't keep it. Said I wasn't gonna tell nobody, but that was just me messing with the F blues. But then I can also use the blues scale for the key I'm in. So then I can use A flat blues. Right? So said I wasn't gonna tell. Couldn't keep it. Couldn't keep. that's a little secret. So that's all I have for you guys today. Obviously, there are a lot of little nuances that goes into traditional gospel. And you might be saying, Warren, I want to see those specific licks you're doing. How do you come up with these specific licks? Where can I use these specific licks? Piano Lesson with Warren has a lot of that stuff broken down in details. If I were to do that in this video, it would turn out to be a 4, 5, 6 hour video. All right, so if you want these specific details, specific breakdowns, specific use of chords and all of that stuff, highly recommend you check out pianolessonwithwarren.com. We're currently running a $1 trial where you can check out the stuff and see what we got. And throughout the course of this year, I'm going to be adding a lot more courses that pertains to traditional gospel. Like, how do you walk bass line in traditional gospel? I gotta keep it to myself. Gotta keep it to myself. Gotta keep it to myself. Tell nobody. You ought to be there. Wasted my soul. Ought to be there. Say my name on the road. I walk and you know what I mean? So there are a lot of little things that goes into this stuff. And I'm going to be breaking this down in more details in the form of courses over at pianolessonwithwarren.com. All right? But with that said, I trust this tutorial was enlightening, educational, and always entertaining for you. These 6 tips can take you a long way if you keep these in mind when you're practicing. All right? And again, if you haven't hit the subscribe button yet and the notification bell, there's so much information over here. So if you just even want to just hang out on YouTube, there's a wealth of information over here. I highly recommend and suggest you check out the playlist where I separated or segment the tutorials into skill level. So beginner videos, intermediate videos, advanced videos, and that alone can keep you busy for years. We have hundreds of videos over here, so it's a great place to hang out and see what you can pick up, quick tips and stuff like that. All right? So until then, keep listening, keep singing, keep practicing, because this is how you'll continue to improve as a musician. Catch you next week for another tutorial. Bye for now.